Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back. If you saw last week's video, you know that we got all the trusses put together because they come in two halves. This is an Indigo kit out of Shawnee or Sand Springs, Oklahoma. A weld up kit, 50 by 100 building that we're working on. Anyway, we got them welded up, and then we got all the caps on our columns, and then our columns cut to length. They just send 20-foot sections of 4-inch tubing, and we had to cut them down to 15-foot 4.5. So the top of the building is just like this one, literally a replica of this one. So the top of our eave right here, sidewall or the eave, would be 16 foot at the top of the purlin. Got a little rain last night, but not too bad at all. Jesse's going around right now and sweeping the water off the edge so we can pop our chalk line and go ahead and get started. Alright, so it's the next day, but I wanted to show you guys what we got done the other day, or yesterday. We got this bottom run in all the way down. What we did was measure up at the corner, 4.5 to the top of the purlin. Purlin's 1.5 inches thick or whatever, 1.5 inches up and down. So I wanted it 3 inches off the concrete. This Indigo building kit did not come with any blueprints, and I've heard that about these kits, but they do have some drawings or whatever on their website, which I did look at, but it doesn't help you as far as how to space everything. As far as off the bottom, it tells you 4-foot centers on these as far as once we get that bottom one in, but to my knowledge, I'm real bad at research, but to my knowledge it doesn't show you how far to go up. But luckily, there again, I was very fortunate to start on a project where there was one exactly identical to what we're building right here. So anytime we have any questions, I'm able to go right over here, and check it out. So done that, and then ran a string line from this corner all the way to center of the pad, 50 foot, and then I had Jesse hold the string up in the middle just a touch, because if you look down it you could see that it was sagging just a touch. So I had him hold it up just a touch, and I went through there and marked it with a speed square. Just put my speed square right up against the string and marked it on each side, and then done that all the way around except for this wall. We're leaving this wall open so we can get in here and hang our trusses whenever we're ready to do that. But our goal is to get these walls built first, put these purlins in. And today we actually got rained out because it rained a bunch last night and a little bit this morning, and more over here where this job's at than it did at the house. I was gonna show you guys these jigs that I built this morning. So Jared actually came up with this idea. As far as the jig idea, I just dreamt about it last night, I guess you could say. And what I did was get some 4-inch purlin that I had at home, cut it to 46.5, because to top to bottom it's 46.5, and that'll put our purlins at center to center 4 foot. So cut our purlin to 46.5 inches, and then I welded a plate right here, and then plates on either side. Then on this top I bolted a magnet to it, and then of course put plates on the outside so it just goes right up against there. We'll cut 3 more of these the same length and then put them there, knock the jigs out, set them on top, put them there, all while making sure our section is staying plumb. Daryl at Railroad Yard used to build metal buildings, and he's been helping me a bunch as far as, you know, little tips and stuff, because this is actually a big step for me. I've never built a building of this size. Same idea, I mean, a welder, fabricator, you know, there's just little things to keep in mind, and I was quizzing him and asking him, and he was, you know, giving me advice, you know, before I took this job, because I would have liked to do some smaller buildings and stuff. But my whole point to that is I'm very thankful for Daryl and all the information he shared, along with a couple other people that's helped me as far as tips and tricks on these buildings. So anyway, he advised me to make sure these sections, as you're putting your purlin in, stays plumb, you know, all the way down. So we're gonna check the whole way down. I mean, in theory, I tell Parker, me and Parker have this joke about in theory, because I always say in theory. In other words, in the perfect world, if you cut all these purlins to the same length and put them in there and make your posts match, in theory, it ought to stay plumb. But with fabricating anything, you just want to check as you go. It reminds me of building a header. I worked in the tank farm for a little bit years ago, the tank farm in Cushing, Oklahoma, and I worked for a guy that was very particular on building headers, because in a tank farm there's tons of headers, and one thing with headers is you want to make sure center of each flange is, like, you literally want to shoot for perfection, because if you get off even a 16th here and a 16th on your next one, well, if you got, you know, 10 flanges down here that only have a pup that's 3 inches wide in between each one, then when you get to the end it could be a banana. So I always strive to shoot for perfection. I'm realizing real quick, I told Jared yesterday, I said, look, everything you've learned, because Jared, pipeline welder also, and I said, everything you've learned about fabrication, getting stuff, you know, to the T, yada yada, I said, throw it out the window for this building. And I don't mean no like disrespect for this type of work, but it's just, there's more tolerance, I'm finding out, because these are so tall. Like if they're just a touch off, whenever we go to set our truss, or whenever we go to put these in, we can take a ratchet strap or bring it, because there's flex to it, is what I mean. As to where like big inch pipe work, there's no flex in that pipe, that thick pipe. So it's more important to be more on key with that stuff. So all that to say, it's a huge learning curve and I love it. But today we got rained out. I think I already said that, but I wanted to, because it was a mess. I felt like I was on a pipeline job yesterday because of this over here. Well, all of this is soppy now, but this right here, you can kind of see where it was puddled. Well, it was puddled yesterday, and I have my truck right in here because that's what I had my machine and that little machine on my truck, and that's what we were using to weld, and I had to drive up and down here to get our leads to reach to weld the bottom of these posts. And it was just a disaster, to make a long story short. So I was like, you know what, it was raining half a day today here out on the job, so I was like, I'm gonna take advantage of this rain day, build these jigs that Jared thought of, and then bring my carts. I had a cart for this already, and I had a cart for that machine, so I was like, I'm just gonna put them on carts and we can roll them around, you know, where we need them, easy peasy. So that's what I did. I'm essentially roughing it on this first building because I really need another welding machine. I don't like using this guy. I'm trying something else. It was plugged into my machine right here. With 6010, you know, welding these purlins in, it's all right. But if like welding 7018, that's what I use to weld these posts down to the slab here. They had embedded plates, and we welded them down with 7018, but we welded the purlin to the post with 6010. Running the 7018, that little machine kept flipping this breaker on my machine. It just wasn't ideal. So I'm actually plugged into this building over here with a 10 gauge extension cord running to my little machine, and I'm gonna try that to see if that helps the issue with our machine, so we can actually weld, you know, two guys at the same time, because some of this isn't as big a deal. I mean, it's all about efficiency, right? But yeah, one welder could do all this, but it's just be a little more enjoyable and more profit margin and everything else to get it done faster. More importantly, whenever we go to hang these trusses, I want a guy here with a welder and a guy over here with a welder to be ready to tack, and then a guy in the middle on the scissor lift holding the truss level, and then we can tack it on each side and then run our, what do you call them, rat tails or whatever, or maybe even a purlin on top to hold the top of the truss to the other truss, tying it all together. But I'm just saying it'll be easier to have two welders, one on each side, whenever we go to do that process. I feel like I've definitely been rambling, but I wanted to catch you guys up because it's been go, go, go whenever I have these guys out here helping me. I'm not used to having help. So hopefully after this building, we can have more of a system and I can actually film and explain what's going on. But I'm learning as I go here. So, You know, I've been taking some time lapses, as you guys have seen in the last video and whatnot, but I do want to take moments like this that I have to kind of describe what you know, how it's going out here. So anyway, I'm pretty much done here today, but I got to roll up my leads on my machine so it's nice and tidy, and then I think that'll be it. I think I'll be good for today. And there we have it. I'm pretty stoked about it, really pretty excited. Some of you asked where I get my doors for my weld machine. That's where I got mine. A couple years they've been on there now. I like them. Alright, it is now the next day. Me and Jared come out here this morning. Jared got all of our cross members, all of our pieces that you can see here. He got all of them cut to length. We finished up the bottom, and then he cut all those. And then it started raining, but we got this 100-foot wall here. It's not welded out, but most of it's tacked up, or all of it obviously is tacked up. Walk-through door will go there. I'll have to frame it in. And then this post in the corner was leaning pretty bad, let's see, this way. So rather than starting right in the corner, I come down 2 places, and oh my gosh, it's raining, it's getting worse, I'm gonna have to go. But I come down 2 sections to where both posts were exactly level, and I went ahead and put it in. I'm gonna do the next section, or maybe 2 more, and then maybe go back and start at the corner, because then it'll have something to push on. Like I'm creating a brace right here, so whenever I put this cross member in, I already put one in, but all it's doing is pushing this post over, if that makes sense. So I need something strong to push on it. That way it pushes, instead of keep pushing these posts over, what I want to do is push this post that way. So I need to create a brace to then put the braces in and push that wall out plumb. So that's why I left these 2 sections and started here. Yeah, so that is the status on the building, coming right along. I can definitely tell the difference of having help and not having help, or having as much help. But I mean, I still feel accomplished and good about what we got done. Yeah, jigs are working good. I may make another set. I don't know yet, but there you have it. All right, it is coming right along. The worst part about what we've got done so far is, I would say, the end walls. So all the 4-inch posts on the side walls are 11 gauge thick, which is perfect in my opinion, but they obviously done some engineering and price cutting and whatnot to get their price down, and they used 14 gauge on the end walls. So those were the worst to weld, and it's like welding on a tin can. But one thing that we learned was to, if anything, cut the purlins to fit tight. You know, you can always sand them down to make them fit, but a gap is just makes your life miserable. I mean, it's good practice. But it goes against everything. Trying to weld a gap with trying to weld two pieces of paper together, because purlin isn't very thick, and then you got 14 gauge tubing. So trying to weld those two together with a gap, you're creating way too much heat. So of course it's a pain. So skipping around helps also, you know, weld a little here, weld a little down here to let that cool off. But for those of you that have not been in welding school or do not know much about welding, a ideal size of a weld on 14 gauge, which is like paper, is not supposed to be but like that big. So therefore, to get a good weld on it, you need it to be touching, because if you got any kind of gap, you're going to have a weld bigger than that, you know. And it's very common to have, you know, lots more weld on this than what's needed, but that's because you're trying to fill a gap, or you're trying to fill the holes that you burn in or whatever, or that you made. So that's what we learned, was to cut them to fit tight, if anything, because you can always sand them to make them fit. So that's what we learned. We are about ready to hang trusses. If you haven't seen part 1 of this video, we'll link it in the description. We'll see y'all next week for the part 3 of this 50 by 100 Indico kit build. Thank you guys for watching, and remember, learn something every day.